Hi, this is Matt from tracymatt.co.uk, and I'm back with the HTC Desire, which we've had for about 24-48 hours now, so we've actually been using it quite well, getting on quite well with it, and yeah, quite like it as a handset. If you haven't seen the earlier videos, just a quick recap. HTC Desire is the latest handset from HTC. It's Android 2.1, which is Eclair. It has a 1 GHz processor, 512 meg of ROM, 576 meg of RAM. It's quad band for GSM, dual band for HSDPA, 5 megapixel autofocus camera, LED flash on the back. It supports up to 32 gig micro SDHC memory cards. I've got a 2 gig in here at the moment. G sensor, proximity sensor, 3.7 inch AMOLED display, is 480 by 800 pixels. Is really very good. That's probably one of the best features of the device. That's not to belittle anything else, but it's just that the screen is really that good. Has built-in FM radio, GPS, HTC footprints, Google Maps, Peep, and various other bits and pieces. So I posted on Twitter that we actually had the Desire, and over on our forum as well, and I invited you to answer your questions. So we've got a few questions to answer, and hopefully we can do that in this video. One of them was how much the display itself attracts fingerprints, so I've deliberately not cleaned the display for the purpose of doing the video. As you can see there, yep, there's an awful lot of fingerprints on the display, and you do find yourself wiping it on your jumper like that very frequently, but I mean, it does come clean pretty easily. And to be honest, when the display's on like that and the backlight's actually on properly, you really hardly notice it. It's not something I've really been sort of that conscious of doing. I suspect with the display off, it's a different sort of scenario, and you find yourself, you know, rubbing the display. The rest of the device doesn't really attract the fingerprints. A little bit on the back if you've got a sweaty palm or whatever, but to be honest, it's not something that I've really sort of been overly bothered about. Not so much as with possibly other handsets that I've had in the past. So that's one thing. The other question that's been asked is the speed of the device versus the HTC Legend. It's very difficult to tell the difference between the two, really. On the Legend, I didn't really notice any slowdown. The only time I noticed any lag on the Legend was if I was viewing a Flash-based website where there was an awful lot of flash. Don't notice that quite to the same extent on this, but I couldn't really pick the difference between the two in terms of performance, to be honest with you. Other questions that we have include the wallpapers, so let's just pop into, well, let's go to a tab here at the end. Let's go away, let's take that away. So the live wallpaper that I'm using here is called HTC Sense, and is my preferred option because it's kind of understated but yet quite cool. There are other options in here though, so let's go into the menu and we'll go into wallpaper, live wallpapers. I'll just show you a couple. We have the Nexus version, which we saw on the Nexus 1. That seems to be quite speedy, even compared to the Nexus 1, but that might just be, well, lack of actually having them side by side perhaps. We have the Polar Clock, which actually works, unlike on the Nexus 1. When you tried to get into the Polar Clock, it basically crashed, so that's there. And what else do we have? We have Smoke, which is pretty cool, and it has various options you can cycle through for different backgrounds. That's pretty cool. We have Grass. Grass isn't really my cup of tea, but you know, it's okay. And well, possibly one of the better ones is the Maps as a live wallpaper. And so it actually loads a Google map in the background there and actually shows your location. So that's quite cool. I'm going to go ahead and switch it back to HTC Sense because, let's say, I think that was the nicest of them. It certainly means that you can determine, and it differentiates this between sort of other devices. I think it's pretty cool. So moving on, POP3 and IMAP account support. Well, I'm using an Exchange email server, and I can set up only one Exchange email server, which is one of the things that kind of bugs me. I'm mentioning it in the review. I mentioned it before. You can only set up one Exchange email account, which is slightly annoying to me because I want to set up about 3. and native Android 2.1 can do multiple exchange email support, but the HTC Sense and all the other bits and pieces of their actual email client can't do it, which is a bit of a shame. But that said, I can set up an Exchange Activesync email account, which I have done here. And if I go into menu, I go to more, and I go to new account, I can add additional email accounts. And I can add a POP3 account, a POP, and an IMAP account. I can add any number of those. So, I mean, email support is pretty good. I'm a little bit picky because, you know, I do want to use multiple Exchange email accounts. That's just my setup. I don't know if that will affect that many people. But you can set up multiple other email accounts, and they work very well. And the way that will also work in when you actually got the combined email is actually color code the emails depending on the source. Let's take a look at the keyboard styles. Let's get to new message. That's the easiest way. So obviously this is the full QWERTY keyboard, and if I rotate, we get a larger full QWERTY keyboard. I find this quite effective because you can go ahead and use, you know, 2 hands, 2 thumbs, and it works really quite well because the keys are quite large. The display is extremely sensitive as well, so that works quite well. If that's not your cup of tea, we can go in and we can change the keyboard type to a compact QWERTY, which is sometimes referred to as a 20-key keyboard. So I know some Blackberries have that style of sort of layout on 20 keys, so effectively 2 letters per button or key. And I can also switch to a phone keypad. Again, some people may prefer this because again it makes the buttons that much larger, so it's easier to get to with your thumb if you've got large hands like me. I mean, I personally don't have a problem with the QWERTY, full QWERTY, but you know, you have that choice. It works in XT9 style or ABC sort of multi-tap style, so that's pretty cool. The only thing is, well, it's probably as you'd expect really. I don't know how else it would otherwise work, but whether you're set to full QWERTY, compact QWERTY, or phone pad style, when you rotate the display, it does give you a full QWERTY. I suppose that makes sense though, really, because otherwise, well, you have extremely large keys if you wanted the sort of phone pad style in landscape mode. So it does make, I think that makes sense to actually make it full QWERTY when you rotate. So let's go ahead and let's switch that back to the full QWERTY because that's my preferred style. You'll probably also notice in there are other, you can turn on predictive text and all that sort of stuff. So I just leave it as the default just at the moment. So that's how we actually do that. And one thing that actually will pop back to the keyboard is, and point out that unlike the Nexus 1 that has where we have the settings button there, Nexus 1 had a little microphone, so you could actually do voice to text entry. The Desire doesn't have that. It doesn't really have it anywhere. In fact, if I go back all the way, I'm going to push the home button. If I go back to here, and for example, I add a widget, and I'm going to add the where are we? Search, the Android search, which is the Google search. Again, on the Nexus 1 here was a small microphone, so that I could do voice search if you like, so I can actually speak my search, but that's not on this device. So basically voice to text isn't anywhere on the HTC Desire, which is a bit of a pity. There's a couple of reasons that might be. One of them, that this has only one microphone and no noise cancellation with the single microphone that the Nexus 1 has. And the other thing is, one thing I noticed about using the Nexus 1 is its voice recognition accuracy seems to be set up for an American accent. So if I actually faked an American accent when I was using it, I had better results than if I spoke with my normal, if you like, English accent. And I suspect that might be more of the issue in terms of the voice search and voice to text recognition, especially as this device is going to be sold throughout Europe. So it's possibly that might be the sort of more key reason why the voice recognition has been removed. That's pure speculation, but that's my thought on it as well. So we looked at the keyboard styles and wallpapers. and voice to speech. Questions have been raised about the buttons at the bottom. They are fairly tactile. They do click, if you can hear that. So and they're quite good. Therefore, I actually prefer physical buttons to the touch sensitive area that was on the bottom of the Nexus 1. I like there's almost a reassurance with tactile buttons, I think, because they're just there. You can find them very easily with your finger or thumb, and more so that you can do with touch sensitive screens. So I actually do prefer the buttons to a touch sensitive area. I think that's, as I say, reassuring. So yeah, they're pretty decent, and they do sort of click away. Just have a quick look at video playback, and I'm going to start video playback on YouTube initially. So let's just go and search for one of mine. Well, let's pick the HTC Desire unboxing video. Let's wait for that to load. It loads pretty quickly, starts playing almost straight away. Okay, and that's pretty smooth. I think that works quite well. Playback is decent. I'm obviously using the YouTube native client here. Let's wait for that to buffer up back up again. But managed to pick a blank area. There we go. It seems smooth enough. Playback's decent. I mean, I'd be happy to watch that. I don't have any issue with that. So yep, I think that's pretty decent. And we pop back out of the YouTube client let's just pop into music. And one thing I want to comment on about music is just a peculiarity. And I'd love to know if anybody else out there has a Desire, either the T-Mobile or eventually when the retail version, SIM-free version does start shipping, perhaps you can tell me. But what I've found with the music that I have on here, and I've only got a few tracks just for the sake of doing reviews and stuff, is that it's not displaying the album art. Now the memory card I have in here is the memory card I used when I did the HTC Legend videos, and I know there is album art attached to these MP3 files, but it's just not displaying them. I've even tried actually putting other ones on here. The Desire just doesn't seem to want to display them. It's just one of those sort of weird, peculiar things, and I don't really know why it's doing that. But I've got several tracks on here. So let's pop back into music. I have got several tracks on here, and none of them will display the album art, and not all of them are just from the same album or anything. So just one of those sort of peculiarities. I've got artists here actually listed. I've got a different artist there. They should all have album art, but none of them are actually picking that up. As I say, just one of those sort of peculiarities. And come back and pop into news. And one of the things that I've been using, or have found quite useful, is the news application, if you like. It's kind of an RSS feed reader to all intents and purposes, but it works really quite well, and I quite like it. And you've got a couple of different ways of viewing your RSS. And the one that I've got here is sort of more visual and seems to want to display just the images from the news article, which I think is actually quite cool. You know straight away what the article should be about, sort of broadly. So it does seem to just want to display the images, and the other one is just a more standard sort of list view. Yeah, and that works quite well. There's also a desktop widget for that as well. We do have to select a subscription for that to actually show up here, but there is a desktop widget to go with it as well, which is quite nice, and that will also show multiple subscriptions in one place. So yeah, I think that's pretty good. The other questions that we've been having are surrounding things like the actual display brightness and readability in sunlight. Well, actually, luckily we had some sun yesterday, and it works okay unless the sun literally is shining directly onto that screen, and you're holding it at that angle that you're basically reflecting the sun into your eyes. Yes, you will struggle to see the display, but then you would struggle pretty much to see any display. And I found that even whilst outside in bright conditions, you can just like move the display a little bit. I mean, if I do that now, there are angles at which you can't really see the display versus angles where you can. So I think in terms of display brightness, well, it's about as good as it gets, and you know, in direct sunlight it's about as good as it gets, especially as it's an MOLED display, not a transflective display. But you know, just bear that in mind. We do have built-in FM radio, which I've been using. That works quite well. We also have Peep, and I've got that set up now with Peep and also with FriendStream, which we're just going to find FriendStream. And let's wait for that. I keep getting this coming up on FriendStream. Now that again, probably just a peculiarity of, I don't know, my setup, possibly something to do with my account or whatever. But I've even hard reset and set up my account, reset up my Twitter account, and I get actually this come up. So I'll obviously raise that with HTC and ask a question as to what that might be causing that. Now, if I go into FriendStream without adding any accounts, either Twitter or Flickr, it does work and I can get in, but I mean, that's pretty useless because without any accounts added, it's, you know, doesn't perform any function. But as soon as I actually go ahead and add a Twitter account, it, well, goes wonky, as you saw there. The other thing that's kind of an irritation at the moment as well is not the weather. Let's just pop that back down. Is this thing about setting the current time, and this comes up about every 5 minutes, and you kind of just have to ignore it in the end. So if I go into that now, it wants me to set my current time zone, which I'll go and do, and I'll set it up and I'll say, you know, London as being my nearest city in the United Kingdom. Fine, I click done. And you think, right, that's sorted, and I've now set the time zone. But in about 5 or 10 minutes time, that'll actually pop back up at the top here and tell me that I need to actually set my time zone, and that keeps happening in a loop. As I say, I've just, well, basically learned to ignore it now. It is pretty irritating. So I hope that covers a few more things that you perhaps would like to see with the HTC Desire. I have actually got the handset for another couple of days, and if any other questions do come up in the meantime, I'll try and cover them via the forum or respond directly to you on Twitter. It's practically impossible to actually cover everything on a device in such a short period of time, but hopefully I've covered some of the questions that you have. So as I say, please do feel free to ask me any questions on Twitter. On Twitter, you can get hold of me on Tracy and Matt. So feel free to add me and just, you know, drop me a line through that or through our website, tracyandmatt.co.uk, and head over to the forums. We've got, you know, a couple of threads going on the HTC Desire at the moment, so feel free to ask questions. Do my best to get back to you on that. There's been some discussion about the ROM versions of these Desire handsets that have been going out. My understanding is only the ones that were shipped out on Friday have the latest and full Google validated version of the Android OS. That's my understanding. There are, I've been told that there are some other versions of the Desire out there that have been out there for review, and that T-Mobile have their own versions of the ROM, which is slightly different. We've managed to get that verified now. They have a slightly different build, which can be seen if you go into the menu settings, and we go to About Phone, and where are we? Go to Software Information. You can actually see this here. This obviously is, well, this is, as we understand it, to be the latest version that has been validated by Google. The T-Mobile version has an earlier ROM version on there. Now, quite what the difference may be, can't really comment. I'd like to get hold of a T-Mobile version as well, so we can actually just see if there are any actual differences between the two. But we'll try and do that over the next couple of weeks. But thanks for watching. I'm Matt from tracyandmatt.co.uk. Please do come and see us over at tracyandmatt.co.uk, ask us questions, and you know, follow us, and we'll try to give you more information on the HTC Desire. My review will be going up over the next couple of days. It will tell you about all my experience with the device as I've been using it over the last sort of 48, 24 hours, and a few days more actually before I actually post the review. So as I say, please go over to tracyandmatt.co.uk to see more of the HTC Desire.